Get off the stairs. Now! The words cut through the rain like a slap. Loud, sharp, public. A uniformed arm blocked the narrow metal steps leading into the private jet. Elbow locked, body planted with authority. The man wearing the captain's stripes didn't raise his voice because he didn't think he had to. Power, when it believes itself unquestioned, rarely shouts. Alicia Munro stood at the bottom of the stairs, rain soaking the shoulders of her grey hoodie, the hood pulled low against the wind. Water dripped from the hem of her sleeves onto the tarmac, each drop lost in the Sauwick black shine beneath her feet. The aircraft loomed above her, white and massive, its engine ticking softly as if impatient. $60 million of metal and privilege, close enough to touch, far enough to be denied. "You don't belong here," the pilot said, his mouth curling slightly as he looked her up and down. "Maintenance access is on the other side of the field. Take your bag and move along before I call security." Alicia didn't flinch, not at the words, not at the sneer. Her face stayed still, calm in a way that unsettled people who expected anger or fear. She tightened her grip on the worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The strap bit into her palm. She felt it. She welcomed the pain. It anchored her. Behind the pilot, the jet's open door breathed warm air into the rain. Leather, coffee, money. A world that had already decided she didn't belong. "I'm here for the flight," Alicia said. Her voice was steady, low, controlled. It didn't beg. It didn't challenge. It stated. The pilot laughed, a short, humorless sound like air forced through a crack. He turned his head slightly toward Tull. The cockpit, where another man had paused mid-check, half hidden by the wing. Younger, thinner, less certain. "You hear that, Ethan?" the pilot called. "She says she's here for the flight." Ethan Brooks, the co-pilot, hesitated. Rain streaked down his glasses as he leaned out, trying to read the situation. He looked at Alicia, took in the sneakers, the hoodie, the tired eyes that didn't dart or drop. Something in his expression shifted. Doubt, maybe, or curiosity. "Captain," Ethan said carefully. "What's her name?" The pilot didn't look back at him. "Doesn't matter." He turned fully toward Alicia now, stepping down one stair, putting himself higher, forcing her to tilt her head up. The rain darkened the navy fabric of his uniform. 4 gold stripes glinted under the floodlights. "Listen," he said, slower now, as if explaining something to a child. "This is a restricted area. You don't just wander onto a private ramp. I don't know who sent you, but you're not boarding this aircraft. Not dressed like that. Not without clearance." Alicia felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not panic. Recognition. The same pressure she'd felt years earlier in hospital corridors when patients' families mistook her for a nurse. The same tone she'd heard in boardrooms when she walked in last, and men stopped mid-sentence. The weight of assumption. Heavy. Predictable. She glanced past him at the fuselage. The gold stripe. The registration numbers painted clean and precise. She knew them by heart. She'd signed them, approved them. paid for them. "I'm not wandering," she said, "and I don't need clearance from you to board my flight." The pilot's eyes hardened. That did it. That single sentence. The audacity of it, in his mind. He straightened, chest out, shoulders squared. "Your flight," he repeated, tasting the words. "That's funny." He raised his voice, letting it carry across the open tarmac. Ground crew slowed. A fuel truck idled nearby. Attention gathered. He wanted witnesses. "Ma'am," he said, stressing the word, "this aircraft is owned by a private client. A very high-profile one. You are trespassing. If you don't step away from these stairs right now, I will have you escorted off this property. Do you understand me?" Alicia met his stare. Dark eyes, unblinking. She saw what he saw when he looked at her. Someone out of place. Someone small. Someone he could move with a gesture. She inhaled. Slowly. The cold air burned her lungs. "Captain Hale," she said, reading his name tag at last. "I understand you perfectly." Ethan shifted under the wing. "Sir," he said again, quieter. "Maybe we should just check the manifest." Captain Gregory Hale shot him a warning look. The kind that ended conversations. "I know the manifest," Gregory snapped, "and I know a security risk when I see one." He turned back to Alicia, lowering his voice. "Last chance. Step away." The rain intensified, drumming against the metal skin of the jet. Alicia felt it soak through her hoodie, down her spine. She was cold now. Not enough to shake, enough to sharpen her focus. She reached into her pocket. Gregory stiffened instantly. "Don't!" he barked. His hand moved to his radio. "Don't reach for anything." Alicia paused, her fingers still. She looked at him, really looked at him. The lines at the corners of his eyes. The confidence built over decades of being obeyed. The certainty that the world made sense because people like him enforced it. "I'm calling someone," she said. He snorted. "Go ahead." "Call your supervisor." She pulled out her phone. Old, screen cracked at the corner, the kind of phone that didn't impress anyone anymore. Gregory smiled, already victorious in his head. He leaned back against the stair rail, rain running down his jaw. "This should be good," he muttered. Ethan watched from under the wing, his unease growing. He could feel it now. That strange imbalance when a moment tipped too far, too fast. When certainty started to fray. Alicia lifted the phone to her ear. Her thumb hovered for half a second. Then she tapped a number she didn't need to look up. The rain roared. The jet idled. The world waited. Gregory crossed his arms, smug, confident, unaware that he was standing on the edge of a mistake so large it would swallow everything he'd built. Alicia listened as the line rang. Once, twice. Then someone answered. Her expression didn't change. But something in her posture did. Her shoulders settled. Her breathing slowed. "Yes," she said into the phone. "It's me." Gregory tilted his head, curiosity flickering behind his irritation. Alicia looked up at him as she spoke her next words, calm and precise, letting them land exactly where they needed to. "I'm at Teterboro, and your captain is refusing to let me board." The rain kept falling. The jet kept humming. And for the first time since he'd stepped onto the tarmac that afternoon, Gregory Hale felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Not anger, not annoyance, uncertainty. The voice on the other end of the line didn't speak at first, just breathing, controlled, measured. The kind of silence that carried weight. Alicia stayed still, rain sliding down her jaw, her eyes never leaving Gregory Hale's face. She didn't need to explain. She didn't need to defend herself. The pause itself was doing the work. "Yes," she said again, quietly. "I'm standing at the foot of the stairs." Gregory rolled his eyes and turned slightly away, waving a hand toward the fuel crew as if dismissing the entire exchange. "Tell him we have a trespasser," he muttered. "I'll have this wrapped up in a minute." He reached for his radio. "Ramp security," he said, pressing the button. "I need assistance at my aircraft. Unauthorized individual refusing to clear the area." The word unauthorized hung in the air. Heavy. Final. Ethan stiffened. "Captain," he said under his breath. "Maybe slow down." Gregory shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm handling this." Alicia listened as the person on the phone finally spoke. The words were low, clipped, carrying irritation that hadn't yet turned into anger. "Put him on." She didn't react, didn't smile, didn't hesitate. She pulled the phone away from her ear and extended it toward Gregory, arm steady despite the rain. "He wants to speak with you." Gregory stared at the phone as if it were something dirty. The cracked screen, the scuffed case, the audacity of it. "I'm not talking to whoever that is," he said. "This conversation is over." He stepped forward and pushed her hand aside. Not hard, just enough, just careless enough to cross a line. Alicia's eyes flashed. "Do not touch me." The words were quiet, flat, but they landed with force. Ethan felt it from under the wing, a shift in the air, like pressure dropping before a storm breaks. Gregory froze for half a second. Not long. Just long enough to register that something had gone wrong. "You have 3 seconds, Alicia said, lifting the phone again. "Take it, or this becomes much worse for you." Gregory laughed, too loudly. "You're threatening a pilot on a secured airfield. That's not smart." "1," she said. Ethan stepped closer now. "Sir, just take the call." Gregory ignored him. His jaw tightened. Pride flared. He was not a man accustomed to backing down, especially not to someone like her. 2. Gregory snatched the phone from her hand, annoyance radiating off him. He raised it to his ear, turning slightly away, already preparing his dismissal. "This is Captain Gregory Hale," he barked. "Who is this?" The response detonated through the receiver. Not a shout. Worse. A controlled fury sharpened by authority. What the hell do you think you're doing? The color drained from Gregory's face so fast it was almost imperceptible. His posture collapsed inward, shoulders tensing, spine no longer straight. Ethan saw it immediately. The way Gregory's eyes widened, the way his free hand dropped. "Yes, sir," Gregory stammered. I didn't realize." The voice on the other end cut him off. "You didn't realize what? That you were blocking the owner of the aircraft from boarding her own plane?" Gregory swallowed, hard. Alicia watched him carefully now, not with satisfaction, not with anger, with something colder. Assessment. "I thought she was," Gregory began. "Finish that sentence," the voice snapped. "I dare you." Silence. Rain hammered the fuselage. The jet's engine ticked. Somewhere in the distance, a security vehicle slowed, its lights washing red across the tarmac. Gregory's hand started to shake. He lowered the phone slightly, eyes flicking to Alicia, then away. "I made a mistake," he said weakly. "You made several," the voice replied, "and you're about to understand exactly how expensive they are." Gregory held the phone out to Alicia with trembling fingers, like it might burn him. "She wants to speak to you," he said, barely audible. Alicia took it back, wiping a drop of water from the screen with her thumb. "I'm here," she said. "Yes," the voice replied immediately, the tone softening just enough to reveal concern beneath the anger. "I'm so sorry." Alicia exhaled slowly. The tension in her shoulders loosened by a fraction. "We'll talk later," she said. "Right now, I need to board." There was a pause. Then, "Do you want him removed?" Alicia looked at Gregory. Really looked at him. The man who had stood above her, minutes ago, like a gatekeeper to a world he believed he owned. Now he couldn't meet her eyes. "No," she said. "Not yet." Gregory sucked in a breath of relief so sharp it was almost a gasp. "I want him to fly the plane," Alicia continued. "I want him to sit in that cockpit knowing exactly who he tried to throw off his aircraft." The silence on the line stretched. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "We'll discuss his future when we land." She ended the call and slid the phone back into her pocket. "Move," she said to Gregory. He scrambled out of the way, nearly missing a step as he backed up. His authority evaporated, replaced by something raw and exposed. Fear. I'm very sorry," he said. "I was just trying to protect." Alicia didn't look at him. She placed one foot on the first step, then another. The metal was cold beneath her sneaker soles. Inside the cabin, warmth rushed out to meet her. Soft light, cream leather. Silence broken only by the faint hum of systems waiting to wake fully. Ethan stood at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. He stepped aside quickly, giving her space, offering a small nod. Respect, apology, gratitude, all tangled together. Alicia passed him without a word. Behind her, Gregory remained on the tarmac, rain soaking through his uniform. The gold stripes on his shoulders dulled and meaningless now. He watched her disappear into the cabin, the door still open, the boundary between their worlds finally breached. For the first time in his career, Gregory Hale understood something he had never considered. The person you judge as powerless might be the one deciding whether you ever work again. The cabin door hissed softly as it began to close. The sound echoed in his chest like a verdict. The cabin sealed shut with a muted thud, cutting off the rain, the noise, the humiliation left on the tarmac. Alicia stood just inside the doorway for a moment, letting the warmth settle into her bones. The jet smelled faintly of leather and citrus polish. Soft amber lights traced clean lines along the ceiling. Everything about the interior was designed to calm people who were used to control. She didn't move right away. She let the silence stretch, the kind of silence that forced others to fill it with their own thoughts. From the galley, a young flight attendant froze mid-step. Her name tag read, Lily Carter, early 20s, neatly pinned hair, hands clasped too tightly around a folded towel. "I'm sorry about the delay," Lily said quickly, her voice thin. "We'll be departing shortly." Alicia turned toward her. The movement was slow, deliberate. Lily felt her pulse jump. "It's not your fault," Alicia said. "You don't need to apologize for him." Lily blinked. Relief flashed across her face, followed by something else. Fear, maybe. Or recognition. She nodded and retreated, careful not to look toward the cockpit. Alicia moved deeper into the cabin. Her footsteps were soft against the carpet, barely audible. She passed the empty club seats, the polished wood tables, the wide windows streaked with rain. Everything here had been chosen by her, every stitch, every surface. And yet, minutes earlier, she'd been treated like an intruder. She set her duffel bag down beside the master seat, but didn't sit. Instead, she stood in the center of the cabin, shoulders squared, breathing steady, listening. From behind the cockpit door came muffled voices. Sharp. "Tense. Checklist," Gregory's voice snapped. "Yes, Captain," Ethan replied, quieter, clipped. Alicia closed her eyes for half a second. She felt the residual adrenaline buzzing under her skin. Not rage. Focus. The kind that came before an operating room went silent. In the cockpit, Gregory strapped himself into the left seat with movements that were just a little too fast. His fingers fumbled at the harness, slick with rain and sweat. The glow of the instrument panel cast harsh shadows across his face. He avoided looking at Ethan. "Hydraulics," Ethan said. Gregory nodded, eyes scanning, not really seeing. The words from the phone call replayed in his head, looping, relentless. "Owner of the aircraft. She pays your salary." He had replayed the moment she'd stepped past him on the stairs over and over. The way she hadn't looked back. The way she hadn't needed to. "You missed the fuel balance," Ethan said gently. Gregory bristled. "I've got it." Ethan fell silent. He focused on his side of the panel, jaw tight. He had never seen Gregory like this. Not in weather. Not in turbulence. Not in an emergency. Gregory had always been unshakable. Until now. The engines spooled up, their low hum vibrating through the cabin. Alicia felt it through the soles of her shoes. A familiar sensation. Ground becoming suggestion. The jet began to taxi. Lily appeared again, pushing a small cart. Her smile was professional, carefully assembled. She stopped a respectful distance from Alicia. "Would you like anything before takeoff?" she asked. "Water? Tea?" Alicia considered her. The slight tremor in Lily's hands. The way her eyes flicked toward the cockpit and back. "Hot tea would be good," Alicia said. "Thank you." Lily nodded and moved away quickly. As the jet turned toward the runway, Gregory's voice filled the cabin over the intercom. It was smoother now, polished, the voice he used when he needed to sound in control. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be departing shortly. Flight time to Aspen will be approximately 3 hours and 45 minutes. The ride should be smooth." Alicia listened without reacting. She took the cup Lily handed her and wrapped her hands around it, feeling the heat seep into her palms. The jet paused at the runway threshold. Engines roared. Acceleration pressed her back into the seat as the aircraft surged forward. Gregory pulled back hard, too hard. The nose pitched up aggressively. Alicia's tea sloshed dangerously close to the rim. She tightened her grip as gravity pressed down. In the cockpit, Ethan glanced at the attitude indicator. "Angles steep." "I'm clearing the weather," Gregory snapped. The jet leveled abruptly. The sudden change sent a ripple through the cabin. Somewhere behind Alicia, glass clinked. She exhaled through her nose. Alicia reached for the cabin phone. The light blinked in the cockpit. Gregory stared at it like it was a live wire. "Cabin calling," Ethan said. Gregory swallowed and pressed the button. "Flight deck." Alicia's voice came through, calm and unmistakable. "Are we flying a luxury jet or a fighter plane, Captain?" Gregory's face flushed. "Apologies." "There is no turbulence," Alicia said. "I'd like to arrive with my drink in the glass, not on the upholstery." "Fly accordingly." The line went dead. Ethan didn't look at Gregory, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Barely. Gregory stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the controls. The authority he'd worn like a uniform was gone. In its place was something brittle, defensive. Who does she think she is? The thought flared, ugly and reflexive. Then came the answer, just as quickly. Someone who can end you. The remainder of the climb was smoother, autopilot engaged. Silence settled into the cockpit, thick and uncomfortable. In the cabin, Alicia finally sat back, closing her eyes for a moment. The confrontation outside had drained more from her than she cared to admit. Not because it hurt, because it was familiar, because it never seemed to end. She opened her eyes and stared out the window as the clouds fell away beneath them. The ground receded, lights shrinking into patterns. Lily returned quietly, collecting the empty cup. She hesitated, then spoke. "Dr. Monroe," she said softly, "if you need anything at all." Alicia met her gaze. "How long have you flown with Captain Hale?" Lily swallowed. "About 6 months." Alicia nodded. "In that time, has he ever treated a passenger the way he treated me?" Lily's lips parted. No sound came out. She glanced toward the cockpit door, then back. Her silence stretched, heavy. "That's what I thought," Alicia said gently. "Thank you." Lily retreated, eyes shining, shoulders tense. Back in the cockpit, Gregory couldn't stop thinking about that silence, about what it said, about what it confirmed. He stared at the darkening sky ahead, heart pounding, mind racing. He told himself it had been a misunderstanding, a bad moment. Anyone could make a mistake. But beneath the rationalizations, something else stirred, a deeper fear. Not of being fired, of being seen. The jet cruised smoothly now, cutting through the night. In the back, Alicia leaned her head against the seat, eyes open, thoughts sharp. She had boarded the plane. She had reclaimed her space. But the night was far from over. The cabin had settled into a false calm, the kind that felt smooth on the surface and sharp underneath. Alicia unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, rolling her shoulders once as if preparing for a long walk down a hospital corridor at 3 a.m. The jet cruised steadily, engines humming with disciplined restraint. She moved toward the rear of the aircraft, past the galley where Lily stood arranging glasses she didn't need to arrange, hands busy because her thoughts weren't. "Are you sure you're okay back there?" Lily asked, too quickly. "I will be," Alicia said. "I just need to stretch." Lily nodded, stepping aside. Her eyes followed Alicia longer than professional courtesy required. The rear stateroom door slid open with a quiet hiss. The lights came on automatically, bathing the room in warm gold. Mahogany trim, cream fabric, a bed that looked untouched. Everything was immaculate, staged for comfort, for trust. Alicia stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She didn't sit. She stood still, letting her eyes scan the room the way they always did, the way they had been trained to. She noticed patterns most people didn't. The alignment of objects, the absence of dust, the smallest disruptions. Her gaze landed on the cabinet at the foot of the bed. One door sat slightly ajar, barely. Just enough to be wrong. Alicia frowned and walked closer. She knelt, fingers brushing the hinge. Something resisted. A thin edge of plastic caught between the metal. She pulled it free. A torn corner of a heavy-duty bag. Not trash. Not accidental. Her pulse quickened, not with panic, but with clarity. She opened the cabinet. Inside, tucked behind neatly folded blankets, were 3 black hard cases. Industrial, scratched, out of place. The kind used for equipment, not linens. Alicia stared at them for a long moment. "This is my plane." She dragged the first case out. It was heavier than it should have been. The latch wasn't fully secured. Whoever had put it there had rushed. She flipped it open. The sight stopped her breath. Watches. Dozens of them. Perfectly nested in custom foam. Polished metal catching the light. Diamonds. Complications. Brands she recognized instantly, even without being a collector. She didn't need to touch them to know their value. Her mind did the math automatically. Hundreds of thousands. Millions. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. Then another. She searched one of the models. The number appeared on her screen. $350,000. She closed the case slowly. Her stomach tightened, not with fear, but with anger sharpened into purpose. This wasn't arrogance. This wasn't discrimination alone. This was criminal, federal, dangerous. The jet shifted slightly, turbulence rippling through the floor. A soft chime sounded as the seatbelt sign illuminated. Alicia straightened and moved toward the door. It opened before she could reach it. Gregory stood there. He froze when he saw the open case. The color drained from his face so fast it looked unreal. His confident posture collapsed inward, shoulders curling, eyes darting between Alicia and the evidence at her feet. For a second, no one spoke. The engines hummed. The aircraft pressed on through the dark. "You weren't supposed to come back here," Gregory said hoarsely. Alicia stepped between him and the case without raising her voice. "Close the door." He hesitated. His hand shook as he obeyed. The latch clicked. The sound felt final. "What is this?" Alicia asked. Gregory swallowed hard. "Personal items." Her gaze didn't waver. "Try again." He ran a hand through his hair, fingers trembling. "I was helping someone. Just transporting. It's temporary." Alicia let out a quiet breath. "You hid contraband on my aircraft." Gregory took a step toward her. She raised a hand. "Do not come any closer." His eyes flicked to the bedside phone. "To the window. To the door. I owe people," he said, the words spilling now, messy and desperate. "Bad people. This was the last run, I swear." The jet lurched, harder this time. A warning chime sounded again. "Gregory," came Ethan's voice over the intercom, sharp with strain. "We just lost engine indications on number 2. Gregory turned toward the door instinctively, training battling panic. Alicia didn't move. "Go." He hesitated, torn. The aircraft shuddered. Gravity shifted. "Now," she said. Gregory bolted. Alicia grabbed the bed frame as the plane dipped, her body thrown sideways. The roar of the engines changed pitch, one screaming, the other sputtering. She slammed back onto the mattress as the jet banked sharply. In the cockpit, alarms screamed. "Engine failure," Ethan shouted. "N1 dropping." Gregory fumbled at the controls, sweat pouring down his face. His hands shook as he fought the yoke, mind splintered between survival and exposure. In the cabin, Lily screamed. Alicia forced herself upright, gripping the heavy case and dragging it with her as the floor tilted at a sickening angle. She crawled back toward the main cabin, muscles burning, breath ragged. The plane dove. The lights flickered. Alicia strapped herself into the nearest seat, clamping the case between her legs, arms wrapped around it. Not to protect the contents, to preserve the truth. Across the aisle, Lily sat frozen, tears streaking her face. "Look at me," Alicia said. Lily did, gasping. "We're going to be okay," Alicia said. The lie was calm. Necessary. This aircraft can fly on one engine. Just breathe. In the cockpit, the Rockies loomed on the synthetic display like jagged ghosts. "We can't make Aspen," Gregory muttered. "We're committed," Ethan replied, voice tight but steady. No turning back. The cabin shook violently. Plates crashed. A bottle shattered somewhere, champagne exploding like gunfire. Alicia closed her eyes for half a second, thought of the lives she'd held together with steady hands, thought of how fragile everything really was. The runway lights finally pierced the dark. "Gear down," Ethan called. The landing was brutal. Metal screamed. The jet slammed onto the runway, bounced, then skidded, tires smoking as Gregory fought to keep it straight. They stopped at the very end. Silence crashed down harder than the landing. Gregory unbuckled and ran. Alicia stood as emergency lights flashed outside, red and blue flooding the cabin. She blocked the aisle, the case at her feet. "Sit down," she said. Gregory lunged. She stepped on his hand. He cried out, collapsing to his knees. "You tried to steal from me," Alicia said. "You endangered lives, and you still think you're the victim." The cabin door burst open. Cold air rushed in. Boots thundered. "Police! Hands up!" Gregory sobbed as he was cuffed. Alicia raised her hands calmly. "I'm the owner," she said. "And that is evidence." The agents moved quickly, efficiently. As Gregory was dragged away, he twisted back toward her, hatred and despair twisted together on his face. "You ruined everything," he spat. Alicia watched him go. She didn't feel victorious. She felt resolved. Because this story was no longer about her humiliation. It was about accountability. The smell of burnt rubber and cold mountain air filled the cabin, sharp and clean, cutting through the lingering haze of fear. Alicia stood near the open door, her hands still raised, her breathing slow and deliberate. Red and blue lights washed over her face in rhythmic pulses, painting her calm expression with urgency that didn't belong to her anymore. The chaos had peaked. Now came the reckoning. An FBI agent stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, his jacket dark against the snow. His eyes moved from Alicia to the black case at her feet, then back to her face. "Ma'am," he said evenly. "Are you injured?" "No," Alicia replied. "No one in the cabin is." He nodded once, absorbing that. "I'm Agent Thomas Keller. We received a transponder distress alert and a separate call regarding possible contraband. You're the owner of the aircraft?" "Yes." Her voice didn't waver. It didn't need to. Gregory Hale was on his knees a few feet away, wrists cuffed behind his back, shoulders shaking. Snowflakes clung to his hair, melting into his collar. He looked smaller now. Not physically. Spiritually. A man hollowed out by exposure. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "I had it under control." Agent Keller crouched and snapped on latex gloves. He opened the nearest case, his face tightening as the contents came into full view. "That's a lot of money," he said quietly. "Undeclared," Alicia added. "Hidden in the rear stateroom. I discovered it mid-flight." Keller straightened and signaled to his team. 2 more agents moved past him, heading toward the bedroom. Gregory let out a broken sound. "They made me do it," he said desperately, lifting his cuffed hands. "You don't understand. I was trapped." Alicia turned to look at him. Not with anger, with clarity. "No," she said. "You made a choice, then you made another, and another. You just never thought you'd be seen." Gregory flinched, as if struck. Behind them, paramedics checked on Lily and Ethan. Lily sat wrapped in a thermal blanket, eyes glassy, hands clenched in her lap. When she saw Alicia, she straightened, her fear easing just a fraction. Is it over? She whispered. Yes, Alicia said. You did well. Those words landed harder than any sedative. Lily's chin trembled. She nodded, swallowing. Ethan stood nearby, helmet under his arm, jacket unzipped, face pale, but composed. He met Alicia's eyes and held them. Respect. Gratitude. Something like relief. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have said something sooner. Alicia studied him for a moment. You did when it mattered. Agent Keller returned, holding a phone in an evidence bag. The cracked screen was unmistakable. Yours? He asked. Yeah, Alicia said. He took it on the tarmac. Keller nodded, handing it back. We'll add that to the report. Gregory twisted around, eyes wild. She doesn't want the attention, he blurted. This will hurt her too. The press, the headlines, billionaire doctor, smuggling scandal. You'll ruin her name. Alicia didn't respond immediately. She let the words hang, exposed. I don't care about my name, she said finally. I care about the law. And I care about the people you put at risk. Keller signaled to the officers. Gregory was hauled to his feet, boots slipping on the icy pavement. As they dragged him toward the waiting vehicle, he turned his head, desperation curdling into rage. You think you're better than me, he snarled. Because you have money. Because you fooled them. Alicia met his gaze steadily. No. I think I'm accountable. That's the difference. The door slammed. The engine started. Gregory Hale disappeared into the flashing night. The noise faded. The scene quieted. Alicia exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Agent Keller turned back to her. We'll need statements from you and the crew. This will take some time. I understand, she said. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, you kept everyone alive. Alicia gave a small nod. That was never in question. They moved to a temporary staging area near the runway. Cameras hovered at the perimeter now. News vans. Curious onlookers. The story had already escaped containment. Alicia watched from a distance, hands tucked into the pockets of her hoodie, breath fogging the air. She felt tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Not broken, not shaken, just aware. Her phone buzzed. She answered without looking at the screen. Yes. The voice on the other end was tight with relief. I saw the alert. Are you safe? I am, Alicia said. A pause. He's in custody? Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. What do you want to do? Alicia looked back at the jet. The scorched engine housing, the tire marks, skidding off center. $60 million of trust violated. I want his pension frozen, she said. His severance voided. And a civil suit for the damage to the aircraft. Done, the voice replied. And one more thing, Alicia added. Yes? I want a full review of every pilot on the roster. backgrounds, financials, patterns of behavior. The answer came immediately. It's already started. Alicia ended the call. Ethan approached cautiously. "Dr. Monroe," he said, "the authorities are asking if we can move the aircraft once the engine is secured. I'm certified on this model." She turned to him, studied him. The way he stood, the steadiness in his eyes. "You'll be the captain," she said. Ethan blinked. "Ma'am? You kept your head. You spoke up. You flew the plane when it mattered." She held his gaze. "Congratulations." Something like disbelief crossed his face, then gratitude, then resolve. "I won't let you down." "I know," Alicia said. They shook hands, firm, equal. Lily watched from nearby, wrapped in her blanket, eyes wide. Alicia caught her gaze. "Go get warm," Alicia said. "We're done for tonight." Lily nodded, tears spilling freely now. The crowd at the fence grew louder as word spread. Phones lifted, questions shouted. Alicia didn't turn toward them. She didn't need to. She stood there in the cold, hoodie darkened by melted snow, looking at the aircraft that had nearly cost lives, because one man believed he was untouchable. This wasn't about revenge or triumph. It was about consequence. And for the first time since she'd stepped onto that rain-soaked tarmac hours earlier, Alicia Monroe felt the weight of the night begin to lift. The story wasn't over. But the truth was finally in the open. Morning came without ceremony. No sunrise over the runway. No triumphant calm. Just a dull grey light pressing against the windows of a quiet conference room at the airport. Coffee gone cold on the table. Statements stacked neatly in front of Alicia Monroe. She read every line before she signed. Dates, times, engine failure, unauthorized cargo, crew conduct. The language was clinical, stripped of emotion, as if the night had been nothing more than a procedural deviation. Agent Keller watched her from across the table. He had slept maybe an hour. It showed in the tightness around his eyes. "This will trigger a federal investigation," he said. "Smuggling, endangerment, aviation violations. It won't be quick." "I'm not in a hurry," Alicia replied. Across the room, Ethan Brooks sat straight-backed in a plastic chair that was too small for him, hands folded, eyes forward. He hadn't spoken much since the landing. When he did, it was precise, measured. He answered questions the way he flew, clean, focused. Lily was gone now, escorted to a hotel by a trauma counselor, her uniform folded carefully in a paper bag, like something she might want to keep someday, or burn. The door opened. A man in an expensive coat stepped in, phone already in his hand, face set in a practiced mask of control. Michael Grant didn't waste time on pleasantries. "They're outside," he said quietly to Alicia. "Press, cameras. They know your name." Alicia didn't look up from the page she was signing. "Let them wait." Michael hesitated. He had known her for years, had seen her command rooms filled with men twice her age and twice her net worth. He recognized that tone. This wasn't avoidance. It was timing. "They're spinning it already," he said. "Hero doctor, rogue pilot, Smuggling ring. It's getting loud. Good, Alicia said. Truth usually is. She capped the pen and slid the folder back across the table. Agent Keller stood. We'll be in touch. Likely sooner than later. Alicia nodded. I'll make myself available. As Keller left, Michael leaned closer. Are you sure you want to be this visible? Alicia finally looked at him. Her eyes were steady. Awake. I didn't choose visibility, she said. It was forced on me. Michael exhaled. What do you want to do now? Alicia stood. The hoodie she'd worn through rain and snow still hung on her shoulders. She hadn't changed. She didn't plan to. I want to go home, she said. The walk through the terminal was quiet at first. Too early for crowds. Too late for secrecy. A few heads turned. A few phones lifted before their owners thought better of it. Someone whispered her name like a rumor. Outside, the cold bit sharper than it had hours earlier. Aspen looked pristine in the daylight, as if nothing had nearly gone wrong in its airspace overnight. The SUV waited. The door opened. Alicia paused before getting in. Ethan stood a few steps back, unsure whether to approach. You should get some rest, Alicia said. Yes, ma'am. She shook her head. Not that. He corrected himself immediately. Yes. Thank you. She studied him for a moment. This will get uncomfortable, she said. Investigations tend to be. I know, Ethan replied. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded once. That was enough. The door closed. The SUV pulled away. Inside, Alicia rested her head against the window, watching the mountains slide past, jagged and indifferent. The adrenaline had finally drained, leaving behind a deep, bone-level exhaustion. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Calls she didn't answer. Messages she didn't read. She let them stack up like unopened mail. At home, she kicked off her shoes and dropped the duffel by the door. The house was silent. No alarms. No voices. Just the low hum of heat and the smell of pine drifting in through a cracked window. She poured a glass of water and drank it standing at the counter. Her hands were steady now. Her reflection in the darkened glass looked older than it had the day before. Not weakened. Sharpened. She slept for 4 hours. When she woke, the world had caught up. Her name was everywhere. Screens filled with images from the runway. The jet at the end of the asphalt. The flashing lights. Headlines that swung wildly between praise and speculation. Billionaire surgeon exposes smuggling ring. Private jet horror averted by owner. Pilot arrested after mid-air emergency. Some got the facts right, others didn't. It didn't matter. The narrative had escaped her control the moment the wheels hit the ground. She showered, changed clothes, sat at her desk, and opened her laptop. There were emails from the hospital board, from investors, from attorneys, from journalists she'd never spoken to and never would. She ignored most of them. Instead, she opened a single document. Blank, white, waiting. She began to type. Not a statement, not a defense, a timeline. Every interaction, every assumption, every moment when someone could have chosen differently and didn't. Hours passed. By evening, Michael called again. "He's being arraigned tomorrow," he said. "No bail." Alicia closed her eyes briefly. "Good. They're asking if you'll testify." She didn't hesitate. "I will." Michael went quiet. "You know what that means?" "Yes," Alicia said. "It means he won't get to rewrite the story." That night, she watched the snow fall outside her window, slow and relentless, covering everything equally. The world had a way of pretending that fresh layers erased what lay beneath. They didn't. The next weeks moved fast and slow at the same time. Gregory Hale's past unraveled under scrutiny. Debts, offshore accounts, emails that told a story he'd never intended anyone to read. A pattern of entitlement, of shortcuts, of looking down. The FAA suspended his license pending revocation. The airline cut ties publicly, loudly, eager to distance itself. Alicia returned to work, back to operating rooms where her hands mattered more than her name, back to patients who didn't care about headlines, only outcomes, back to the quiet discipline of saving lives, one careful decision at a time. But the world didn't forget. Neither did she. When the subpoena arrived, she read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in her bag. Court would come next, and with it, the part of the story that no one could spin. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and recycled air, a place built to remind people that time moved slowly here and consequences lasted. Alicia Monroe sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap, spine straight, eyes forward. The white suit she wore was unremarkable by design. Clean lines, no jewelry, no armor disguised as elegance. She hadn't come to perform. She had come to finish something. Behind her, the gallery filled in quiet increments. Reporters, observers, a few aviation professionals who recognized the weight of what was unfolding. They spoke in whispers, as if loud voices might provoke the walls into remembering other trials, other falls. Gregory Hale sat at the defense table, smaller than she remembered him. His shoulders slumped. The confidence that once filled a cockpit had drained away, leaving behind a man who looked permanently startled, as if the world had shifted while he wasn't looking, and never bothered to move back. When he glanced at Alicia, his eyes darted away quickly. Shame, maybe, or resentment, or fear that still hadn't found a place to land. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The prosecutor rose. Her voice was calm, precise, sharpened by preparation. "This case is not about a single mistake," she began. "It is about a pattern." Alicia listened without moving. The words washed over her, familiar now. She had read them in reports, heard them in interviews. Patterns were easier to deny when they stayed abstract, harder when they were laid out piece by piece. Emails were displayed. Bank records, flight logs, dates lining up with debts, with withdrawals, with unexplained cargo manifests. Gregory's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Alicia felt the tension ripple through the room. This wasn't spectacle. This was dissection. When her name was called, She stood smoothly and walked to the stand. The oath felt unnecessary. She lived inside truth for a living. The prosecutor approached. "Dr. Monroe, can you describe your interaction with the defendant on the tarmac at Teterboro?" Alicia answered evenly. She didn't embellish, didn't soften. She described the words, the posture, the refusal to verify her identity, the physical contact. She felt the room tighten as she spoke, discomfort settling in, recognition in some faces, denial in others. "And how did that make you feel?" the prosecutor asked. Alicia paused, not because she didn't know, because she chose her words carefully. "Seen," she said, "in a way I'm used to. Judged before I spoke. Reduced to an assumption." Gregory shifted in his chair. The defense attorney stood. Polite, controlled. "Dr. Monroe, is it possible Captain Hale was simply following security protocols?" Alicia turned her gaze to him. "No." He blinked. "Can you elaborate?" "He did not ask for my identification," she said. "He did not consult the manifest. He did not follow protocol. He followed his instinct." The attorney tried again. "Isn't it true that private airfields have heightened security concerns?" "Yes," Alicia said, "which is why trained professionals verify information instead of guessing." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The attorney pressed. "You're a powerful woman, Dr. Monroe. Do you think it's possible you're interpreting this through the lens of your own experiences?" Alicia's expression didn't change. "I think it's possible you're hoping I will." The judge cleared his throat. The defense shifted tactics. "Let's discuss the contraband. You opened a cabinet in the rear stateroom. Without permission." Alicia didn't look at him. "It's my aircraft." Silence followed. Dense, unavoidable. The defense attorney nodded slowly, as if acknowledging a point he couldn't escape. No further questions. When Alicia stepped down, she felt lighter, not relieved, completed. Gregory took the stand next. He spoke of pressure, of debt, of people who had threatened him, of how it had started small. One favor, one flight, one blind spot. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," he said, voice cracking. Alicia watched him carefully. Not with satisfaction, with interest. She had seen this before, in patients, in colleagues, in men who confused explanation with absolution. The prosecutor approached. "Captain Hale, when you blocked Dr. Monroe from boarding, did you know she was the owner of the aircraft?" "No." "And did you attempt to verify her identity?" "No." "Why not?" Gregory hesitated. The room held its breath. "I didn't think I needed to," he said finally. The prosecutor nodded. "Because you decided she didn't belong." Gregory opened his mouth, closed it. The prosecutor continued. "And when you hid contraband on her aircraft, did you inform her?" "Number." "Did you consider the safety of the crew and passengers?" "I thought I had it under control." The prosecutor's voice hardened. "You lost an engine at altitude." Gregory flinched. "I know." "You endangered lives," she said, "including your own." Gregory's shoulders collapsed. "I made a mistake." "No," the prosecutor replied. "You made a choice." The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Guilty, on all counts. On all. The word landed with finality, echoing off wood and stone and memory. Gregory's face went slack. His attorney whispered urgently, but the sound didn't seem to reach him. He stared ahead, eyes unfocused, as if watching something only he could see. Sentencing was set for later that afternoon. Alicia returned to her seat. She felt nothing like triumph. The process wasn't designed for that. It was designed to draw a line and say, "Here, no further." When the judge spoke again, his voice carried weight earned over decades. "Mr. Hale," he said, "your actions demonstrate not only criminal intent, but reckless disregard for human life. This court cannot overlook that." He paused. Papers rustled. A gavel rested heavy in his hand. "I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison." Gregory's breath left him in a broken sound. Alicia closed her eyes briefly. 15 years. Enough time for a life to reset, or harden, or disappear. As marshals led Gregory away, he turned his head one last time. His eyes met Alicia's. There was something there now that hadn't been before. Understanding. Too late. Alicia stood as the courtroom emptied, the noise swelling around her like a tide receding. Michael waited near the door. "It's done," he said. She nodded. "It's done." Outside, the sun was bright, unforgiving. Life moved on without pause. Alicia stepped into it, carrying the quiet knowledge that accountability once demanded changed more than one life. It changed the air people breathed. 3 months later, the airport looked the same and felt entirely different. Morning light spilled across the tarmac at Aspen, crisp and clean, reflecting off fresh paint and polished metal. The Bombardier sat where it always had, but it no longer carried the invisible weight of that night. The damaged engine had been replaced, the scorched panels repaired. A thin midnight blue stripe now traced the fuselage, subtle but unmistakable, a quiet mark of renewal. Alicia Munro stepped out of the SUV, wearing the same grey hoodie she'd worn before, the fabric softer now, broken in by time and weather. No cameras rushed her, no voices called out. The story had burned hot and then cooled, as stories do, leaving behind only those who had lived it. At the base of the stairs stood Ethan Brooks. 4 gold stripes gleamed on his shoulders. He stood straighter than he used to, not from pride, but from awareness. Responsibility changes posture. It had changed his. "Good morning, Dr. Monroe," he said, his voice warm, grounded. "We're fueled and ready." She looked up at him, taking in the uniform, the confidence that no longer wavered. "Good morning, Captain." The word still surprised him. It always would. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere felt lighter. Lily Carter was already at the galley, hair neatly pinned, movements steady. There was a new ease in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Experience, hard-earned. "Welcome back," Lily said. "Coffee's ready, just the way you like it." Alicia smiled, small and genuine. "Thank you, Lily." As she settled into the master seat, Alicia felt the familiar hum beneath her, the gentle vibration of a machine designed to move forward. She placed her bag down, reached into it, and pulled out her laptop. There was one last thing to finish. The aircraft began to taxi, smooth and unhurried. Ethan's voice came over the intercom, calm and precise. No unnecessary flourish. Just facts. Just direction. Alicia opened her email. Most of the noise had faded by now. The interviews, the requests, the think pieces written by people who had never stood on that tarmac, never heard that voice tell them they didn't belong. She had declined all of it. Instead, she had focused on what came after. She opened a draft she'd been refining for weeks. Subject line, simple, direct, the Monroe Aviation Fellowship. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, then began to move. The fund would cover full training costs for aspiring pilots from underrepresented backgrounds. Flight hours, certifications, mentorship. No loans, no favors owed. Just opportunity. She typed with intention, each sentence precise. This wasn't charity. It was correction. The jet turned onto the runway. Ethan's hands were steady on the controls. Lily took her seat. The engines spooled up with a controlled power that felt almost respectful. Alicia glanced out the window. This was the same place where she had been told to move, where her presence had been questioned, where assumptions had tried and failed to decide her worth. The aircraft accelerated. Lift. The wheels left the ground smoothly, cleanly, without drama. The mountains fell away beneath them, sharp edges softened by distance. Alicia hit send. She closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the seat cradle her. For the first time since that night, she allowed herself to feel something close to peace. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Alignment. Ethan leveled off and engaged autopilot. The flight settled into a quiet rhythm. He glanced back through the open cockpit door, just for a second, and caught Alicia's eye. She gave him a small nod. He returned it. In the galley, Lily poured 2 cups of coffee, her hands steady. She carried one to Alicia, placing it gently on the table. "Paris in about 8 hours," she said. "Smooth air all the way." "Perfect," Alicia replied. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, easing into cruise mode. Outside, the sky stretched endless and blue. Alicia sipped her coffee and closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to think. About the chain of decisions that had brought her here. About how easily things could have gone differently. About how many times they already had. For people without a phone call to make, or a name anyone recognized. She thought of the courtroom, of Gregory's face when the verdict was read. Not with pity, with clarity. A reminder that systems fail most often when people decide they are above them. She thought of Ethan, of Lily, of the future pilots who would step into cockpits because someone had bothered to open a door instead of guarding it. The jet moved forward, cutting a clean line through the sky. Alicia opened her eyes. There was more work to do. There always would be. But for now, the plane flew steady, the crew focused, the path ahead clear. And that was enough. The world did not change. But it shifted. quietly at first, in places that rarely made headlines. 6 months after the sentencing, Alicia Monroe sat in the back row of a small auditorium in Alabama, the kind with scuffed floors and folding chairs that had seen generations of waiting. The banner above the stage read, Tuskegee Regional Flight Academy. The letters were slightly uneven, painted by hand, not marketing. On stage, a group of young men and women stood stiffly in borrowed suits, hands clasped, eyes forward. Nervous, hopeful, trying not to look like they were holding their breath. Alicia didn't sit in the front. She never did. Power, when it was real, didn't need to be seen. The director of the academy cleared his throat at the podium. His voice carried pride and disbelief in equal measure. This year, he said, for the first time in our program's history, every selected candidate will complete their training debt-free. A ripple moved through the room. Sharp inhales, hands tightening. One student dropped their head, overwhelmed. The director continued. Thanks to a private endowment, these pilots will log every required hour, earn every certification, and graduate with placement support already secured. Applause broke out, uneven at first, then full, sustained, echoing off the walls. Alicia watched from her seat, hands folded, expression composed. She felt it then, not pride. Purpose, the deeper kind that didn't flare and fade, the kind that stayed. After the ceremony, one of the students approached her slowly. Mid-20s, nervous smile, eyes bright with something close to disbelief. Dr. Monroe, he asked. They said this was you. Alicia nodded. Congratulations, he swallowed. I almost quit last year. I was working nights just to afford fuel time. I didn't think people like me were meant to sit up front. Alicia met his gaze. The cockpit doesn't care who you are. It only cares how well you fly. He nodded hard, committing the words to memory. That same week, an internal memo circulated through multiple aviation management firms. New compliance standards, mandatory bias training, updated reporting protocols, quiet changes that would never trend, never spark outrage, but would alter trajectories all the same. Ethan Brooks felt it from the left seat. As captain now, he noticed the difference immediately. Questions asked sooner. Assumptions challenged faster. A subtle but unmistakable shift in tone when someone tried to dismiss a concern as nothing. He didn't announce it. He modeled it. On one flight, a junior mechanic hesitated before speaking up about a vibration reading that was still within limits but didn't feel right. Ethan grounded the aircraft without hesitation. They found a fault that would have worsened at altitude. The mechanic didn't forget that moment. Neither did anyone watching. Lily Carter noticed the changes in the cabin. Passengers who spoke too quickly, too sharply, too certain that authority belonged to them by default. She had learned the difference between deference and respect, and she no longer confused the two. When a man snapped his fingers at her from a seat that wasn't his, she stood her ground. Calm, unmoved. "We don't do that here," she said. He stared, surprised, then complied. After the flight, she sat in the galley and let herself smile. The news cycle moved on, as it always did. New scandals, new villains, new heroes. Alicia's name appeared less frequently, then not at all. She preferred it that way. Back at the hospital, her days returned to a familiar rhythm. Scrub in, focus, hands steady, decisions sharp. Life reduced to what mattered in that moment. Occasionally, someone recognized her. A resident, a patient's family member, a visiting surgeon. "Were you the one with the plane?" they'd ask, careful, curious. "Yes," she'd say, and then redirect. "Tell me what you're seeing on the scan." She never corrected the versions of the story people carried. She didn't need to. The lesson had already traveled further than any interview could. One afternoon, a letter arrived on her desk, forwarded from a federal facility. No return address visible at first glance. She didn't open it immediately. When she did, the handwriting was unfamiliar, careful, restrained. Gregory Hale wrote about the silence, about how loud it was, about how much time there was to think when there was nothing else to do. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not blame her. He wrote about arrogance, about how certainty had made him careless, about how he had confused control with worth. The last line was simple. "I see it now." Alicia folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. She didn't respond. Some realizations were meant to be carried alone. That night, she stood on the balcony of her home. The city lights spread out below like a map of quiet decisions and loud consequences. She thought about how easily the night on the tarmac could have gone differently. How close it all had been to disappearing into another untold story. She had not planned to become a turning point. She had simply refused to move. The sky above her was clear. Planes crossed it silently, white lines fading almost as soon as they appeared. Alicia watched them pass, knowing that somewhere in one of those cockpits, someone who might have been told they didn't belong was flying anyway. That was the change. Not loud, not complete, but real. And it was still moving. The flight back was quiet in the way earned silence always is. Alicia Munro sat alone in the cabin, lights dimmed, the steady hum of the engines wrapping the space in something almost meditative. Outside the window, the sky faded from blue to black, the horizon dissolving into stars that didn't care who owned what below them. She wasn't thinking about Gregory Hale anymore. Not about the courtroom. Not about the sentence. Those chapters had closed themselves. Consequences had landed where they were meant to. What stayed with her were the smaller moments, the ones that never made the news. The way Ethan's voice had steadied the cabin when fear crept in. The way Lily's hands had stopped shaking when someone finally said, "You don't need to apologize for someone else's behavior." The way a student in Alabama had stood taller on a stage because a door had been opened quietly, without conditions. Power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply refused to move. The jet descended smoothly toward the city, lights spreading beneath them like a living circuit board. Alicia felt the familiar settling in her chest, the feeling of returning to work unfinished and responsibility chosen, not imposed. When the wheels touched down, there was no drama, no applause. Just precision, exactly the way it should be. Ethan taxied the aircraft in, movements unhurried, confident. He shut down the engines with the same care he'd used to bring them home. "Welcome back," he said over the intercom. Alicia stood, grabbed her bag, and walked forward. She paused at the cockpit door. "Good flying," she said. Ethan smiled, small and genuine. "Always." Outside, the night air was warm, familiar. No cameras, no crowds, just a quiet tarmac and a team doing their jobs without spectacle. As she walked away, Alicia glanced once at the aircraft, not with pride, with recognition, a reminder of how easily things could have gone wrong, and how deliberately they had been set right. In the weeks that followed, the world kept turning. The fellowship grew, applications tripled, stories filtered back, not about her, but about people who now had somewhere to go that wasn't closed to them on sight. At the hospital, a young resident hesitated before challenging a senior surgeon during rounds. Alicia watched the moment unfold, watched the calculation, the fear. She waited. The resident spoke up. They were right. Afterward, Alicia caught their eye and nodded once. No speech, no reassurance, just acknowledgement. That was enough. One afternoon, she walked past a newsstand and saw a magazine cover featuring someone else's downfall, someone else's reckoning. The cycle continued, hungry and endless. She didn't stop to read it. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. A photo. A cockpit view at sunrise. Mountains in silhouette. The caption was simple. "First solo flight with one of the fellows today." Alicia smiled. At home that evening, she stood at her window again, city lights blinking on as if someone were slowly exhaling. She thought about how many times she'd been told to wait, to move, to step aside. How often those moments were framed as politeness, as procedure, as nothing personal. She knew better now. She always had. The difference was that others were starting to see it too. This wasn't a story about a plane or a pilot, or even justice in the dramatic sense people liked to imagine. It was a story about presence, about what happens when someone decides that their existence does not require permission. Alicia turned away from the window, ready for the next morning, the next operation, the next quiet choice that would ripple outward in ways she might never witness. That was fine. Impact didn't need applause to be real. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of a moment when you were underestimated or watched someone refuse to shrink, take a second to like this story and subscribe for more narratives where accountability matters. And if you want to add your voice, leave a comment with 3 words that say it all. Own your space.